Strap into your seats and get ready. It's time for the Mortarpod.
Hey everybody, Alex Stephenson from SeemsGoodMagic.com here. Welcome to this week's episode of the Mortarpod. No Jake this week, unfortunately, and especially unfortunately because this is episode 100 of the Mortarpod. This is the 100th episode of our podcast that we've done over the last, I don't even know how long it's been. It's probably been 2 or 3 years since we started the first Mortarpod, so it's been a long time. And I've really enjoyed kind of sculpting the podcast into a direction that's enjoyable for the most amount of people. And I enjoy making these custom magic sets every week with the help of Jake, of course. And so thank you all for tuning in all this time. We really appreciate it. It takes a lot of time and effort to keep these consistent podcasts going. And I apologize, this week's is a little bit late, but yeah. Just very excited about achieving the 100th episode of our podcast, and many more to come, I hope. So, first and foremost, if you haven't already and you're not familiar with SeemsGoodMagic.com, go to SeemsGoodMagic.com if you like to watch draft content, because I post daily draft videos, and I'm already 20 plus drafts in of Cons of Tarkir at this point, and it's a really fun format. I've really enjoyed it a lot. Started really poor performance for the first maybe 16 to 18 drafts, but the last 5 to 7, I've really started to do a lot better. As long as I'm going 2-1, I'm pretty satisfied in the Swiss draft. So I think I'm starting to understand it a little bit better. It is a very deep and complex and challenging format, but it is very enjoyable, and surprisingly, despite the really rocky start, I'm still up a lot of tickets. So it's good. It's continuing to fuel future drafts without too much expense on me. So if you enjoy watching some Cons of Tarkir drafts and want someone to sort of talk you through and guide you through the thought process I go through while I draft, you can find those videos at SeemsGoodMagic.com. Okay. So it's the month of October, the last week of October actually, and not quite Halloween yet, but this month Jake and I have done all horror-themed custom magic sets for the Make-A-Wish segment, and this week's no exception. So for Make-A-Wish, this week we're doing The Silence of the Lambs. Now, if you haven't seen The Silence of the Lambs, I recommend you do, because it's a masterful movie. It's awesome. I love it. Anthony Hopkins plays Hannibal Lecter, who's he's a killer who is a psychiatrist. So he's a killer psychiatrist, I guess. But he's not even the main antagonist of the movie. It's actually Buffalo Bill, or Jamie Gum is his actual name. But at this point, I'm just going to throw spoilers. I think if 20 years pass since the movie came out, spoilers are up for grabs. So it's also got Jodie Foster in it as Clarice Starling, the FBI agent, and it's just a really wonderful movie. And since then, they've went on to make Hannibal and Red Dragon, both of which still had Anthony Hopkins. And actually, here's a little weird fact maybe a lot of people didn't realize, but back in the 80s, there was a movie called Manhunt, and check that out, because it's very strange. It has the guy from CSI in it, and he's playing the same role as like Hannibal Lecter. So it's kind of strange. The Silence of the Lambs obviously was derived somewhat from that movie. And I think it all stemmed from perhaps a book also called Manhunt at the time. That I actually don't know. But Manhunt also has like the whole Hannibal Lecter thing going on. And it's very strange. But that was the one precursor to Silence of the Lambs that I know of that's in the same realm of movie. But yeah, Silence of the Lambs is a great movie, and we've got a custom magic set for you this week, so let's check it out. Okay, to start off, you've got Clarice Starling and Jack Crawford, and they are the two FBI agents that are prominently displayed throughout the movie. Clarice much more than Jack, but Jack is Clarice's superior, and he sort of is helping her with some of the investigations of the case, also causing her many problems along the way, as is the usual, agent boss dynamic. But they both have this mechanic called detect, and I'll just go through Clarice and Jack individually here. So Clarice Starling is 1 and 2 white for a 2/4 legendary human soldier creature. She has the ability detect, which is, for her, is detect and 2 white. And if you pay 2 white, you can remove target attacking creature from combat, which is what detect is, removing an attacking creature from combat. And then the other ability Clarice has is, whenever a creature your opponent controls is detected, gain 2 life. So detect is a cool ability because it's versatile. You can remove your attackers from combat, or you can remove their attackers from combat. So it makes combat situations much more difficult, especially in the late game, since you can detect multiple times in one turn. And then getting the added bonus of detecting your opponent's creatures, I think makes Clarice a very amazing sort of mid-range answer to aggressive decks, since it would be very difficult to attack into her early. 2/4 body for 3 is very efficient, and leaving up 2 white mana to remove an attacker from combat can be huge early on, so I felt like she was definitely worthy of Mythic. Then we have Jack Crawford, who is similar to her since he has detect, and he also has a similar triggered ability. So Jack Crawford is 1 white and a red for a 3/3 legendary human soldier creature. And he also has detect for 2 and a red, so he can remove an attacker from combat for 2 and a red. And whenever a creature your opponent controls is detected, Jack Crawford deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So similar idea to Clarice, but he can actually be removal whilst simultaneously detecting removing creatures from combat. So very strong ability mashup. I like how detect turned out. It feels right. I think the theory behind it, when Jake and I were sort of crafting the mechanic, was that if you detect somebody, them removing them from combat would be the equivalent of them sort of fleeing the scene during a crime. And detecting your attacking creatures is sort of like warning them that someone is ahead and then getting them out of the situation. So it kind of works both ways, we thought. You can also see the symbol for this magic set is supposed to be a butterfly, but if you didn't know what it was. But I guess it also could be like a skinned person. I didn't even think about that. But yes, it's supposed to be the moth, actually, not a butterfly, which was significant to Buffalo Bill and his metamorphosis or transition that he's going throughout the movie. More spoilers. Okay, next we have Hannibal Lecter. So Hannibal Lecter, like I said, played by Anthony Hopkins, just a wonderful performance. Definitely a legendary performance. It's going to be remembered for many years to come. And Hannibal Lecter is 2 colorless, a white and a black for a 2/5 legendary human advisor creature. He also has Death Touch and Intimidate, which is kind of an unusual mashup, but I thought it was cool, especially considering Hannibal Lecter in the movie kind of does have Death Touch. He just seems to very easily be able to overpower and kill people, which also makes him pretty intimidating, as you might imagine. He also has this mechanic called Quid Pro Quo, which I came up with. And quid pro quo, if you don't know what that means, it means something for something in Latin. And it's very interesting. The relationship that Hannibal and Clarice develop throughout the movie is one in which Hannibal is very he pesters her a lot for personal information about her childhood and her life, because that's just sort of the psychiatrist aspect of him. And in return for her personal information, he supplies her with some information on the suspect that she's looking for. He knows the answer from the beginning, but he's not willing to give her any information she wants unless he gives her the information he wants about her. So let's go over the quid pro quo, which he constantly says to her throughout the movie. The mechanic. So it is tap and exile the top card of your library. Target opponent reveals the top card of his or her library. If the revealed card shares a card type with the exiled card, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost for as long as it remains exiled. So I thought it's kind of it's a mechanic that's hard to activate, but when you do activate it, there's potential for huge upside. I mean, imagine running like Emrakul in your deck, and then you quid pro quo, and that's revealed on top, and your opponent's is, a Llanowar Elf on top of theirs. You could get a free Emrakul. So the upside for quid pro quo is huge, but it is difficult to get the mechanic to work. You have to have the same card type on top of your library that your opponent would have. And that doesn't always align. The nice thing is, because of the wording, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost for as long as it remains exiled. It means you can hit lands too. So thankfully, there is no card type that's out of the realm of quid pro quo. And definitely land is an important one, since most decks in theory are about 40% land. So you should be able to hit those too. So theoretically, Hannibal Lecter, potentially ramp, but quid pro quo, in the end, a very random mechanic, and it's going to be hard to make it work. But when it does work, you get free spells, and who doesn't like free spells? Everybody in the game of Magic loves free spells. Next, we have Restraining Mask, and you can see from the picture, he's got the mask from The Silence of the Lambs. If They put it on him in the prison because he is a cannibal, so he's very dangerous even with his mouth. So the Restraining Mask is a 1-white aura enchant creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block, and then at the beginning of the upkeep of enchanted creature's controller, put a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature. So it's 1 cheaper than a pacifism, but every turn the creature is getting bigger and bigger. So if they ever remove the Restraining Mask, you have to deal with a much bigger creature. I still think this would be a highly played constructed card because of 1 mana pacifism. I think even pacifism at some point was seeing some constructed play, just as some added. It's a fine card. Turning off an attacker and making it unable to block is a very powerful effect, especially at 1 mana in the case of Restraining Mask. So I needed there to be some sort of detrimental upside, which is the +1/+1 counter. So possibly too good, but maybe not. Also maybe not. I guess it depends. But being able to turn off an opposing creature for 1 mana, usually you have to come to a nice middle ground where it's not too powerful. This one, possibly too powerful, but too powerful, I mean, for the person playing the Restraining Mask, obviously, not the person that's getting the bigger creature that can't attack or block each turn. Maybe it could have been for how many +1/+1 counters on it. Eventually, Restraining Mask has to get removed, something along those lines. I could have added that, but as it is, very powerful removal spell. And let's continue. Next, we have a couple cards Jake designed, so I would have liked to have had him in the podcast to sort of describe his mentality on it, but I've seen these cards enough now where I think I can explain them pretty well. So first we have Inquisition of the Adept, and this is a 2 and a blue instant. As an additional cost to cast Inquisition of the Adept, put a card from your hand on top of your library, and then you can put target non-land permanent on top of its owner's library. And in the picture, you see Clarice Starling talking to Hannibal Lecter through the thick prison glass. He is in, a very high security prison, and the only way that he can communicate with Clarice is through these little holes in this thick glass in front of him. And you can see Hannibal's sort of insidious-looking face in the reflection in the picture. But yes, I think I understand the point of this card. So if I may speak for Jake on this one, I think what he had in mind was if you're putting their conversations were sort of reminiscing about the past. In the case of Hannibal Lecter, explaining about Jamie Gum, his former client. In the case of Clarice, talking about her childhood and being raised on a farm. So both players having to put something on top of their library is sort of the same as reminiscing about the past, which is what I felt about this card. And in that case, very well designed. And there's been plenty of cards similar to this, like Griptide and Grasp of Phantoms, stuff like that. This one, because of how cheap of a cost it is, as well as being an instant, it's understandable why you would have to put a card from your hand on top of your library, why there would be a drawback. All in all, I like this card. Very well designed. Next, we have Logic of the Remorseless, and this is 1 in a red enchantment, an aura, enchant creature, and it gives enchanted creature quid pro quo. So the ability I talked about Hannibal having, you get. And I like actually that Jake extended this to red, since this sort of feels like a red ability too. Red has been known to exile cards off the top of their library and occasionally play them for free. In the case of, unfortunately, I can't recall the name of the red card from M15, since I want to say it was not really played by much of anybody, but it was a 3-mana exile the top 3 cards of your library, and then you can play those cards from exile. But you have to pay their mana cost still that turn. So that ability is a little bit similar to Quid Pro Quo in that you're exiling cards and potentially playing them. Another card, Chandra, I wish I could name which iteration, but one of the iterations of Chandra also lets you, I mean, it's the one currently in Standard. Maybe there's 2 in Standard right now, I'm not exactly sure, but it lets you exile the top card of your library and potentially play that card as well. I think you still have to pay the mana cost on that one, although I'm not sure. But that's another card that's also in red, similar to the Quid Pro Quo mechanic. So I like that Jake moved it into red territory as well. Moving on, we have Criminal Genius and Grisly Ruse. These are 2 more cards designed by Jake. Criminal Genius is a blue and a black enchantment. Each player plays with the top card of his or her library revealed, and whenever a player detects, that player loses 2 life. So in the picture on this one, you can see the cop that Anthony Hopkins or Hannibal Lecter has beaten viciously unconscious in a special jail cell they have set up, and then he's eviscerated and hung up the officer in this picture, which is very gruesome. I think you see a lot of intestines and stuff like that. Pretty nasty stuff. All right, so let's go over the design of this card mechanically. So each player plays with the top card of his or her library revealed. This is obvious benefit to the player playing Quid Pro Quo. Being able to know what's on top of both of your libraries will tell you if it's worth it to use Quid Pro Quo. So once again, I like that Jake thought about that. Very good synergistically with that mechanic that we designed. And next, whenever a player detects, that player loses 2 life, so punishes the player who wants to remove an attacker from combat. Also very cool. And the best part about this card that I think Jake did was if it just said whenever a player detects, that player loses 2 life, it would have been an unplayable card in any other format, but because he added the each player plays with the top card of his or her library revealed, becomes much more playable. So I like that. I like that it works in any format still, despite having the detect, wording on it. So very cool. Next we have Grisly Ruse. This is a green and a blue creature aura. Enchanted creature gains hexproof, and it can't be blocked by more than 1 creature. I think this was actually already on a card as well. It was a 1 and a green card from either Dragon's Maze or I think actually Gatecrash, but one or the other. And Grisly Ruse also has Sacrifice Grisly Ruse, return enchanted creature to its owner's hand. And the picture on it is when Hannibal Lecter is on the back of an ambulance, and he's about to presumably kill everybody on that ambulance to make his grand escape. So these 2 cards are a very specific part of the movie. They still need more information from Hannibal Lecter about Buffalo Bill, the person they're trying to investigate, Jamie Gum, whatever, the former client of his. So they move. They're forced to move because the investigation's location has shifted. They're forced to move Hannibal Lecter to a new location, and unfortunately, this new location is not as well. The security is not as good for Hannibal, and he's able to make his grand genius escape, as is indicated in Criminal Genius. He does so by killing the officers that are supposedly watching him, and then cutting off the face of one of the officers and placing it on his own face so that the rescuing people coming in think it's actually someone else. So a very grisly, as Jake put, ruse to distract and confuse the police officers, which works, and he makes his escape. So Hannibal Lecter is just an awesome character. Such an awesome character. Moving on. We have 2 more cards I designed, and actually the final 2 cards of the set. So we have Buffalo Bill, who is 1 a blue and a black for a 2/3 legendary human creature. He's a mythic. He has tap, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature, then gain control of that creature if its power is less than or equal to Buffalo Bill's power for as long as you control Buffalo Bill. So very powerful effect. What I liked, I sort of took a cue from Old Man of the Sea when I came up with Buffalo Bill. I liked Old Man of the Sea. He was a 3-mana 2/3 that let you steal a creature. He only let you steal 1 creature, though, and he had to remain tapped. And there were some additional stipulations, but he was also monocolor. So because Buffalo Bill is multicolor, because he's a mythic, I wanted to make his ability better than Old Man of the Seas. So flavorfully or aesthetically relating to Silence of the Lambs, if you'll recall, Buffalo Bill would stalk overweight women, knock them unconscious, cut the skin off of their body that he wanted to make a skin suit that he was constructing for himself. And so in theory, what I thought was, since he was knocking them unconscious, you'd put a -1/-1 counter on them. You're basically, crippling or knocking them out, making them weaker, and then that's how you gain control of them. And he kidnaps I believe it's the governor's daughter. It's either the governor or the mayor of whatever city or state they're located in. And he kidnaps her daughter. She happens to be an overweight girl, and he's going to use her for his skin suit as well. So I think Buffalo Bill would be a highly prized card, especially in limited. But he could actually see constructed play if they made a card design like this. I really like that. Putting -1/-1 counters on creatures, so he's like removal if you want. But otherwise, he can steal, a 3-power guy. The first turn, you can activate Buffalo Bill, and even working away at bigger guys to eventually be able to steal them, I thought would be cool. So Buffalo Bill, very cool card. I think I'm very happy with how he turned out. Finally, we have Skin Suit. So as mentioned before with Buffalo Bill, he's in the process of constructing a skin suit made out of all the women that he's kidnapped, various women. And Buffalo Bill is just very strange sexuality. That doesn't go into enough detail to really know everything that's going on there, but there's obviously some confusion about his own gender identity, and it's very interesting. That sort of dimension of the movie is very interesting. So, Skin Suit is a 2-mana equipment. It's uncommon. Whenever a creature dies, put a flesh counter on Skin Suit, and then equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each flesh counter on Skin Suit. So, and equips for 3. Now, seldom in this day and age do they put counters on equipment. I think after Jite, presumably one of the most broken equipment cards of all time, if it's got to be the most broken one. Actually, that might not be true. It's probably Skull Clamp, since that actually ended up getting banned, and Jite is just restricted. So I guess I take it back. But actually, is Jite even restricted? Maybe Jite is not even restricted. I think you can play as many as you want in Legacy. I think it's just legendary, so people sort of limit the amount that they play. since they're usually playing them alongside, Stoneforge Mystic or something like that. But Skin Suit, very similar to some of the white creatures' abilities from times past. There's a 1 and a white 1/1 from Innistrad that has this ability. Whenever a creature you control dies, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So sort of took an idea from that, and I felt like since creatures are dying, the Skin Suit's getting bigger, therefore more flesh on it, making you stronger. Pretty straightforward, fairly simple idea, but I thought it fit pretty nicely with the rest of this set. So overall, that's the Silence of the Lambs set. This has been the 100th episode. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate it. You're going to have plenty more Cons of Tarkir draft content and plenty more Mortarpods in the future. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. Check out SeemsGoodMagic.com. Check out the draft videos that are going to continue to come. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next time.